Well, good morning, everyone. It is great to be back here again. Week 9 is over, and boy, was week 9 busy as usual. We have Jed. I'm actually in LA today, and we have Jimmy over in Phoenix and Jed over in the suburb of Illinois. Welcome, everyone.
Morning.
All right. The one thing I would probably say again, nobody really wants to hear about your team, but I'm currently 3-6 in one of my leagues, the one that we've been around for a long time. I'm in the eighth spot. I'm frustrated because I could have won the last two games, but I keep playing the wrong person. This week I sat Christian Kirk and decided that I'm going to play Amon-Ra St. Brown. Well, Christian Kirk went and scored a touchdown and suddenly had 17 points. And then because of Robbie Anderson's constant uh, personal penalties, I lost a touchdown with DeAndre Hopkins, who
Oh
caught
yeah,
a last
because
minute
because he
touchdown.
because he was offsides. He was
Yes.
offsides when he scored that touchdown. Yeah, I saw that.
And if I had scored that touchdown, I would have won against my opponent by point 0.7 points. I lost by 7 points. I was so frustrated. And so now I'm 3-6. And here we are in number one. I love to pick your brain. My first number one draft. I have waiver wire number one. I have Justin Fields sitting there. And I know Jimmy wants to trade for him.
Tom, actually, I they updated the waiver rankings. I'm number one now.
Well,
Yeah, if you look at it, the updated rankings, I'm number one.
oh, I wonder
Yeah,
why.
it's because the way we set it up, it's based off of the lowest record, and right now I'm the lowest record. So I'm number
Interesting.
one. So I mean, Jed, you will know, like we're at the point right now in the season where you got to make some drastic changes. If you're in last place and you want to get into the eighth spot for the playoffs, you got to make some drastic changes. Otherwise, you're stuck in the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why I made a trade with Kyle Pitts with Jimmy. I'm starting to, those people that you've been waiting on, to turn around things. Darren Waller's another one. Michael Pittman even lately has not been playing well. So some of these high draft picks that you spent, a lot of capital on, you've waited almost half a season. Now is the time to cut bait, and you got to move to the younger generation. I will say, you guys know in Walter White League that we're in, or the one league we're in together, the turn to the younger folks. So Travis Etienne, Kenny Walker, the Houston running back as well. I mean, that's kind of where you got to be thinking. You got to think forward to these folks who weren't drafted high, and that's how you can maybe turn things around in the second half.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, number one, I just noticed that Jimmy, yes, has the number one. Oh man, that's why you just made me a draft pick or a trade offer. We have a stand trade offer for Jamar Chase, for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Chris
Ooh.
Olave. That's actually so we're working on that right now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. 2 for
No,
1.
but Jed, you're right because like okay, this is a perfect example. This past week, I was really thinking about picking up Justin Fields on the waiver wire, right? And I've been looking at him, and I was like, no, I can't get away from Justin Herbert because I drafted him so high. You know what? I should have done it. Because you're right. Sometimes you pick these players so high, you don't want to give them up. But right now, we're in what maybe another 5 games into the playoffs. You're going to have to dump some of these players that have not up until this thus far have not done anything.
Yeah, it's just like watching the stock market, right? When
Yeah.
you're doing your retirement account, you can't, even though you're invested and you're waiting on that stock, you're holding it, you want it to come back. At some point, you got to cut your losses and say, I'm going to use that capital
Yeah.
elsewhere. And so that's the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Like
agree.
even for instance, a lot of times I base my entire draft around Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Devontae Williams. Those are the three that I banked my thing on. Didn't work out. Last year was Antonio Brown. Didn't work out. And so a lot of times, all right, let's make some adjustments here in the middle of the season.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. With that said, my wife in our keeper league, how good is her team? Justin Fields is quarterback, Gabriel Davis, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Alvin Kamara, Ramondre Stevenson, and David Montgomery. And so that's a pretty good team for her. And Cordero Patterson is just sitting there on the bench.
Hmm.
What place is
Yeah.
she in?
She's in first
She's in
place.
first.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Justin Fields. Let's talk about that because there's two things I want to talk about as we start. Joe Mixon and Justin Fields. Justin Fields, I know Jimmy thinks he has high hopes. That's why he's picking up. Jed, do you think he's a real deal? Are you expecting, or eventually will you feel like defenses will pick him up and you won't see the production that we've been seeing?
No, I do think he's the real deal. I mean, it is significant that he set the all-time rushing record over. If you looked at it, I think Mike Vick had like 5 of the top 7.
Yeah, yeah,
But the fact that he did more, I mean, and again, just like Mike Vick, like people didn't give Vick credit for his ability to throw, and I think that's the same thing with Fields. I mean, how many passes were dropped in that game, right? Like when you look to that Miami game, there were several first downs perfectly thrown. The wide receiver dropped the ball. So I am very excited. I think it is a harbinger of what to come. But for fantasy purposes, I do think it's tricky. I think it's hard to know, especially for this year. I think in a keeper league, yes, I think you want to draft him, you want to hold him. But for trying to get into the playoffs over these next, 3 to 4 weeks, I mean, on the other hand, it is you want to shoot for the moon, and I think he is someone who can do that. When he produces well, it could be very high.
yeah. I mean, I kind of look at it and just say, look, I got Justin Herbert as a quarterback. I'll keep him as a backup. He's been averaging roughly about 20 points a game, and I'm in last place, right? I need something to if I can go with Justin Fields and he can score 30, 35 points on a weekly basis, that's 15 extra points that I have in one of my players that I'm trying to make up, especially with the Jamar Chase out. So I'm just trying to get out last place and make it to the playoffs.
Yeah. Now, are you guys concerned by the very fact that he does have a great running ability, 178 yards, but he's still working on improvement on the throwing? And so a lot of times the Darnell Mooney, the Chase Claypool, and all that stuff may still not get it going.
Well, I think I don't know. I mean, I'll give the Bears this, right? The Bears have never been known as the types of teams that adjust midseason, but they've adjusted midseason. They started off really being conservative with Fields. They tried to spread it out. They tried to push the running game. The running game is still doing pretty well, but what you've started seeing is they've really centered their offense now around Justin Fields, right? Mooney's gotten better. Komet picked up 2 touchdowns. And so if they can protect him and he doesn't get injured as he's running around, and they're giving him space to maneuver, I think he'll do well.
Yeah. Jed, did you see, as Jimmy has a phone call, Jed, did you see what Mike McDaniel said to Justin Field on the sideline during the Miami game?
No, I didn't. I missed
He
it.
went up to him and just said, just stop it. Just stop it.
Nice.
So, hey, now let me ask you a quick question for both of you guys. If you're like Charlene, who does have Justin Fields as a pickup in a dynasty league, would you trade him? Would you keep him?
It depends on what else she has, right? She's got, I mean, based off of what you had, she's got a couple good receivers. She's got Justin Jefferson. She's got Jamar Chase. For sure, you want to keep those two. I would say you want I also keep Ramondre Stevenson. And who's your other running back, Tom?
Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, Alvin Kamara, right? I do think that you would want, if I were her, I would seriously think about a Justin Fields instead of like an Alvin Kamara, depending on how many players you can keep for a dynasty league. But if you're going to choose Kamara and you can get some sort of decent players back, I would go for it unless you really feel like you need a Justin Fields to win this league.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, if I were her, I would trade it for a Travis Etienne. I would trade it for a Kenny Walker. I would probably, if I got that offer, I should go for it.
Yeah,
I have a Travis Etienne.
Etienne is amazing. He's been so good.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Hey, also, Joe Mixon, how good was he? 5 touchdowns? Boy, was he running and catching in the absence of Jamar Chase. He was very, very good. But Jed, you still won against Jimmy, even though he had Joe Mixon.
Yeah, that was very fortunate. I had Travis Etienne and Tyreek Hill going against him. No, Mixon had a great outing. I saw we put up kind of the top 10 lists of all time, although we didn't specify if that was PPR league, half point PPR league, or standard leagues. Because depending on your scoring, it'll be interesting to see where he netted out relative to everyone. But essentially, if you get 5 touchdowns, I think the record is 6, I think I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you get like 5 touchdowns, you are definitely in the running for one of the best. Yeah. That's probably going to be the best fantasy performance of the year.
Oh, yeah, yeah. The only thing is I am kind of glad that they have a break because I found that because Mixon has had these types of games in the past where he's done really well. But what I've noticed is the game right after that one, he usually doesn't do as good, right? So I'm glad that he's at least gotten a break. It'll be interesting though when they come back from the break coming up here in week 10, if they're still going to center this offense around Mixon, or if they're going to start opening it up and trying to get the receivers more involved as well too.
Yeah. Jim, what do you think of the Jeff Saturday hire and the firing of Frank Reich?
I'm actually surprised. I mean, I think we were texting back and forth. I was a little surprised that they let go of Frank Reich because remember last year he brought them to the playoffs. He was really highly regarded. Even some people were talking about him as the coach of the year candidate, but for some reason it just hasn't it worked. Right? I do think that it's not all his. By the way, I'm gonna have to pause. Somebody keeps calling me really fast. So here,
Got it.
yeah.
Jed, what do you think in terms of the Frank Reich firing?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a surprise, of course, but I do think when you think about Indianapolis, you just think about the huge expectations going in. Everyone really, had high hopes for Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, and then bringing in Matt Ryan. Really felt like this was going to be a playoff team with championship aspirations, and they've really come to earth, right? Matt Ryan did not perform well. The fact that they're just benching him really for money reasons. I mean, clearly the team is a little bit lost. And so I'm not surprised it's come down to the coach. I mean, that's generally one of the moves, right? When the teams don't meet expectations. But from all accounts, he's supposed to be a great guy. Hopefully he'll get another chance. So it was a little bit of a shock, but you have to remember the expectations that were so high at the beginning of the season now are completely gone.
Which, in some sense, I actually blame it on the offensive line. Remember, one of the reasons why Andrew Luck retired because the offensive line was terrible. Chris Ballard, their GM, made a conscious effort, and they had one of the best offensive lines going. And from that point, Jonathan Taylor started going, opened up all the passing lanes. Phillip Rivers did pretty decent. The last couple of years with Carson Wentz and now with Matt Ryan, the offensive line has given up. So suddenly now Jonathan Taylor's not running, and suddenly it closes up all the receiving lanes for. I don't think Michael Pittman is that good of a receiver where he's like Jamar Chase that could, or Tyreek Hill where he could blow everyone away. And so suddenly now everything struggles.
That's one of the reasons why I picked up Jackson, the backup running back, because I do think at some point, if Taylor continues to go down this route, they might shut him down for the year.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, look, I think a lot of times they're not going to do any well. They're going to keep playing this backup quarterback from UT. And so a lot of times Ellinger, and so it just will not be very good. So I don't have high hopes. I think a lot of times Michael Pittman has not been good. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I mean, ESPN has already started speculating. They're tanking. They're going to try to go for a high draft pick, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, and you can see it. That's why they're playing Ellinger, right? That's why they're taking a risk on a Jeff Saturday. I think what they're doing is they're playing for draft picks right now.
Yeah. Do you know which former head would on the Indianapolis coaching staff, or two former head coaches would be replacing?
Who is it? The Bears' old coach,
John Fox and Gus Bradley of Jacksonville. Yeah. And they thought John Fox would be at least a temporary solution, and so he's not as well too.
Yeah.
A couple of things as well too. Cowboys, they look like to be the favorites for Odell Beckham. Is he somebody that's on your radar, Jed?
Actually, he was. I was debating this. This is we're talking about waiver wire pickups. This is kind of the week you might want to think about getting him, but he really won't be able to. You won't see him play until December, even if he gets picked up, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So I was trying to debate between, essentially, if you get him, you're hoping that he has a nice run right leading up to the playoffs or right during the playoffs, and so. I mean, there aren't very many options now on your waiver wire that could really make a true difference. Like they could get you an extra 5 points maybe, but Beckham is someone who could get you an extra 10, 15, even 20 points. So I think if you're needing to swing for the fences, it's not a bad move, but it's only really if you have the time. So if you're like someone who's in the top half, you've got time, you're preparing for the playoffs. It's really not someone that, you need immediate help now, then you probably not going to be able to do that.
But don't you guys think that the wide receiver, the receiving corps for Dallas is so crowded? You got Gallup, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got Dalton Schultz, you got Tony Pollard, right? That was the only reason why for me I was hesitant to go after Odell Beckham Jr. because I didn't know how much he would be able to help during these playoffs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although I still think talent wise, honestly he takes that true number one, which lets CD Lamb slide into the number two, which we've discussed how really that's better suited for him. So I think he would still do enough to where he would get more of the share of the targets, even in that offense. But that's a good point. There's a lot of mouths to feed. And Dalton Schultz is another one you should take a look at. A lot of people have had him dropped off in the waiver wires, and he's done pretty well the last 2 weeks, and so not a bad person to look at.
Jim, waiver wire pickups. Kenyon Drake. He ran for 24 times for 93 yards, 2 touchdowns. We keep going back to him as well as
Gus Edwards.
Yep. Gus Edwards.
Yeah.
What do you think of Kenyon Drake?
Here's my thing is, like, I think he did well, but you can never fully trust these running backs for Baltimore. I feel like every week there's going to be somebody different. My guess is, right, like Kenyon Drake did well. Next week, you never know, that he might not do well as well, too. Isaiah Likely scored a touchdown yesterday at 32 yards receiving, but then you're also kind of looking at Mark Andrews coming back as well too. So I feel like the players for Baltimore are types of folks that you never trust. You can't really fully trust because of Lamar Jackson, how he plays.
Yeah.
That Isaiah Likely pickup that I had him, Jimmy, that was crazy. I didn't think that you would get a touchdown, but I think he only had 2 receptions and one was a touchdown. So.
You know what? Okay, so you know what was funny about it? Because before you picked him up, this was the same thing with Khalil Hilbert. I was sitting there looking at him, right? And the only reason I was looking at him, I was like, should I pick him up so that someone else doesn't pick him up? And I was sitting there thinking about it. And then you know what? You picked him up. And I was like, shoot, I should have pulled the trigger. And that's the thing is I didn't need him. But sometimes I'm like, you want to pick up a player so that somebody else doesn't pick him up.
Yeah, that's advanced strategy. If you match up against, the weakness of the team you're playing against and what they're looking to pick up, and you go and get the best player at that position. That's pretty smart.
Because I was speculating. I was like, I bet Jed's looking at the same thing, and he might need a tight end. I should pull the trigger. But then I was like, okay, which players do I drop just for this tight end that Jed can't pick up? And that was the difference. That was the difference.
Yeah, that was the difference of the matchup
between us. Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
By the way, we didn't talk Friday as well too. And in some sense, actually, Michael Thomas is once again out for the year with the dislocated toe. The New Orleans Saints continue to start Andy Dalton. Jameis Winston is recovered from his injury, is healthy, but they continue to play Andy Dalton. For you guys, is there anyone that you guys like? Alvin Kamara had his lowest receiving yard here during the season since week 3. Do you guys even like Chris Olave because of this?
I mean, I think they're a mess right now, and so I don't. I mean, I like Olave as a long-term prospect, but for immediate help, it's a tough situation. If you saw yesterday, Dalton has still got some juice left. It's just he didn't have any time. The guy was getting destroyed behind the line, and so it's a tough situation.
I would say from a fantasy standpoint, I wish that they would bring back
Winston.
Because here's my thing. Look, from a fantasy, I don't care if they win or not, but I care about the stats. And Winston can throw that sucker, Give me some Winston, give me some Taysom Hill. I actually think fantasy-wise, Olave would really benefit from them. Yeah, but Jawan Johnson actually scored a touchdown yesterday as a tight end. I mean, there's actually some pretty decent tight ends out there on the waiver wire. We talked about who is who's the Dallas Cowboy guy? Dalton Schultz, right? There's the tight end from Denver, who's actually pretty good. Jawan Johnson, he's the tight end for the Saints. There's some pretty good one. Unfortunately, I don't know about you. Like we said earlier, I think, look, if Pitts and Waller's not doing it for you, it's time to cut them and go for somebody else because there's no point in waiting right now.
By the way, one potential injury to watch carefully because if this comes true, he might be out for a couple weeks. Josh Allen being evaluated for UCL injury. He got hit toward the end of the game. And so as a result, he's having some nerve issue in his elbow. So he had that last year and he was out for 4 weeks because of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was watching and they were saying that they're going to try not to put him on the IR. But what I've been looking at is, look, at least in my team, if I'm going to pick up with Justin Fields, I have Justin Herbert as a backup. if anybody really needs a quarterback and the what do you call it, Josh Allen is out, I'm gonna find a way to trade him and get some assets for my Justin Herbert.
Yep. Side note, Jed and Jim, since we're both all Bears fans, which two former Bears did the New Orleans Saints sign most recently to their 53-man squad? Two former Bears, high draft picks who were starters.
Kevin White.
Kevin White is one. Who's the other one? Jordan
Starter.
Howard.
Really?
Jordan
Oh,
Yep,
Howard.
wow.
Jordan Howard and
Yeah.
Kevin White has now been signed to the active squad for the New Orleans Saints.
Oh.
I'll never forget Kevin White because when he was drafted, my son and I went to that draft town in Chicago, and actually my son played catch with Kevin and got an autograph for him and all that. So had such high hopes for him, and then it just didn't pan out. So sad.
Speaking of that, on the opposite side, Green Bay Packers, is there anyone that you like? The only one, because of the Aaron Jones injury, AJ Dillon is the only one that I'm looking at. Not Aaron Rodgers. He is sitting on that waiver wire. Does anyone disagree with that?
No, I don't, and I have to say, as a Bears fan, it has brought me so much joy to see the Packers struggle. And honestly, every week I take the Packers loss over the Bears win at this point. Like, it is just great. See, I don't know if you guys saw the video of him going nuts on the sideline and getting upset, but yeah, they are trash right now. I mean, Romeo Dobbs, I dropped him. Like you said, Aaron Jones, I'm holding on. I'm actually benching him because of the injury. AJ Dillon's interesting, but they're so lopsided right now that defenses are able to just key in on that running game, and it's just really hurting them.
Aren't you surprised by him? Because early in the season, they did so well using both Dillon as well as also for Aaron Jones, right? Like they did really well. And I don't know what happened these last few weeks, but it's like they completely went away from the running game. And they have no outside Lazard catching a bunch of passes this past week. They had nobody else out there to catch for them.
Well, Rodgers has to he's 2 interceptions in the red zone. He's never done that before. And if you looked at him, both throws he shouldn't have thrown. They were into heavy traffic. He has nowhere to look but himself. Like, he's pressing. He's clearly pressing without Devontae Adams there to kind of bail him out. And so I don't think that it means that his skill set has dropped off. I just think he's in a situation that he's not used to and he hasn't adjusted yet.
Yeah.
He had 9 interceptions all last year. As of this week, he has 7 interceptions. And so a lot of times he's not, like you said, he's not adjusting to it. But at the same time, the Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon combination actually help because it allows his wide receivers to get open, especially in the early going as well, too.
I mean, at some point, don't you guys think that they're going to have to turn it around, though? You know, I mean, there's no way Aaron Rodgers is going to let this happen. So there's a part of me that says they're going to have to do something. They're going to have to focus on the running game. So that's why I'm still at least hoping that between whether it's Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon, they're still at least fantasy relevant.
Elijah Mitchell, designated to return from the IR. Are any of you guys interested in Elijah Mitchell with Christian McCaffrey sitting there?
That's interesting. That's not a bad idea, although I'm actually more interested in the former 49er, Jeff Wilson Jr. Yeah, he really showed this weekend. I mean, he played well. I actually think he might be the number 1 guy there. He might be the better back than Raheem Mostert. So but that's an interesting one. You know, Mitchell, I mean, McCaffrey, they're probably going to be a little careful with him and hopefully not, trotting him out there every single down. And so there may be room for Elijah Mitchell to have some moments.
I agree with you. Jeff Wilson played close to 70% of the snaps this past week, and he was just supposed to be relegated to backup, right? But you're right. He was clearly the better runner and a better pass catcher than Raheem Mostert.
What was surprising was Nyheim Hines. I was expecting him to be able to carve out more of a role in Buffalo, and that didn't seem to materialize. I think he had 0 points. So I didn't watch the game, so I don't know if that was just like due to the script, but it would be interesting. I was expecting Hines to have more of an impact there in Buffalo.
Another play that we were talking about last week, Michael Carter. A lot of times we thought since the trade for James Robinson, he would do good, but James Robinson had 13 carries, 48 yards. Michael Carter had 12 carries, 76 yards, and 1 touchdown.
I mean, you gotta give it to the Jets. They defeated the Bills. Garrett Wilson's had over 100 receiving yards. Zach Wilson looked pretty good. I wouldn't say Zach Wilson's like the best quarterback in the world, but they're going to make some noise going into the playoffs, especially coming off of this victory for the Bills.
I was kicking myself for not betting on that game. So I have
Yeah.
not bet using the Yahoo app all season. I've been like withholding. But when I saw that the Jets were 11-point underdogs to the Bills, I was like, that is a lot of points. I didn't think they were going to win, but I was thinking, man, that is a huge spread. And then they actually went out and beat them. So that was pretty impressive.
Yeah. I said, going to the LA Chargers, how disappointing is Keenan Allen? He's probably your third, fourth round draft pick. He has continued to be out with the hamstring. But Jordan Palmer, he catches 106 yards. Gerald Everett, 5 catches for 36 yards. And did he get a touchdown? No, he did not get a touchdown. And then even DeAndre Carter, a lot of times 5 catches, 53 yards. But with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen out, Jordan Palmer is it.
Yeah, Keenan Allen is old. I feel like the last couple of years he's missed so many games. That's why I don't want to like pick him up. Even Mike Williams get injured all the time too. That's one of the reasons why when I saw Palmer on the waiver wire last week, I started picking him up because Justin Herbert throws so much. They need someone to help in terms of relieving some of the stress on Austin Eckler. And so Palmer, I mean, even Eckler. Eckler on his podcast said, if I had a fantasy team, I would pick up Jordan Palmer. So for me,
Wow.
Yeah, so that's why I was like, he's got to know something. So that's why I picked him up.
Oh, that was good. That's good intel. Yeah, when you hear that, that's always impressive.
Yeah. Hey, on the Tampa Bay side, right? Leonard Fournette has been trash recently. It has not gotten going. But one person to watch is Cade Alton, the tight end. And so a lot of times, even last week with Cade, he had 5 catches, 68 yards, 1 touchdown. That's something in terms of watching him out for. In the last couple games, he's had 68 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 games go, 4 catches, 64 yards. So that's someone to keep on your radar in case you need a tight end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit. Who is your top? Is there anyone, Jed, for you that you're sitting there, man, this is the guy besides Justin Fields that I'm going after this week?
No, I mean, we talked about Jeff Wilson Jr. There was one other running back I was looking at. Who was that? We talked about Odell Beckham. And then we talked about Palmer. Oh, Algier from Atlanta. He had a pretty good run, the Atlanta running back, and he might be on the waivers in some of your leagues. Not a bad person to take a look at if you're, again, looking for running back help.
Yeah.
Jim, what about yourself?
I think there's a couple of players that you might want to look at, right? For those people like Jed and I who have a Kyle Pitts, or we have a Darren Waller, David Njoku is coming back off of IR this week. And so I'm looking at him right now, and I realize that he's on quite a few waivers, right? So he might be somebody he was averaging double digits before he got injured. Cole Kmet, has scored a couple touchdowns, 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Obviously somebody that Justin Fields is looking at, so you might want to take a look at him as well too. And then actually, I thought Kadarius Toney would do more, but Mecole Hardman has scored 16 and then 26 points and then 12 points in the last 3 games for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I actually think that outside of Juju Smith-Schuster, if you're looking for like another wide receiver 2, he would be somebody to look at. And then also the last one is the Carolina Panthers, Terrace Marshall. Terrace Marshall has scored double-digit fantasy points the last 2 weeks with a touchdown. So somebody to look at as well too.
Couple of me is a lot of times be on the lookout for Deshaun Watson. It is now week 9. We're about to hit week 10. He comes back around week 12. And so a lot of times if you just need a sneaky player who might potentially come back and something improve, pick up Deshaun Watson as well too. Dalton Schultz, he's actually on the wire. A lot of times take a quick look at him. Chuba Hubbard, I know a lot of times he's injured, but at the same time, if you do need a running back, I know Devontae Foreman is probably the clear one. But at the same time, Chuba Hubbard, he has some injury issues, might be a potential good one if you're desperate, only if you're desperate. And Otten over at Tampa Bay.
I know a lot of people don't play IDPs, defensive players, but if you do, who's been really good? Javon Hargrave from the Eagles. Hargrave has had 13 points in 13 points in each of the last 2 games with at least six tackles, and then average of 2.5 sacks. But Hargrave is actually a really good player that is available right now. And they were raving about him the other day on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah. Otherwise, hey, in our last couple minutes as well, too, fantasy basketball. We always like to talk about fantasy basketball here. There's no games tonight because of election night, but are there any teams or any players that you guys like that has really been on your radar? By the way, I really am enjoying my team. Every single week I sit there and just scroll down my team. I really enjoy my
Well,
team.
because your team is insane. Like you're gonna just crush people. Like we might have to close the league because your team is too good. Like, but although, we'll see with Wembanyama next year. No, I'll just say I've been enjoying Pablo down in Panchero. He's been, it's just fun watching his stats and watching him get his points. But no, nothing has jumped out really. Well, the other one I'll say for me is again because Trae Young and Murray, like it's been nice seeing them together still get their points. So I've been happy with that.
Jim, can I say one thing? Who I've really enjoyed watching? Russell Westbrook.
Has he done better? I haven't kept up with them.
Since he's been on the bench, he has now got shot 3 points, 22 points, 19 points, 26 points, 18 points, and he is shooting over 50%, even 60% since he's coming off the bench.
Yeah, he's more efficient, and he's definitely like taking more. He's driving more essentially, so he's getting those high percentage shots.
Yeah, I mean, think about him back in OKC, right? I mean, and I wonder if it's because he had to play with LeBron and Anthony Davis, where he had to be more of the playmaker, and he was selected with his shots. You give him the offense, you tell him to shoot the sucker, he'll go for it. The person I've been impressed by, Maxey. Now that Harden and Embiid has been out, Maxey's gone off the last few weeks, so I really like him a lot.
Yeah. If you are a fan of the Golden State Warriors, besides Curry, who is going off, the rest of the players stink. They cannot find a good bench. I was watching the game yesterday. Wiseman has now been benched. JaMychal Green has now been benched, where they're playing Moses Moody. They were playing for him a little bit. Kuminga was playing a little bit. They can't find Jordan Poole. What a disappointment he has been so far.
Yeah. No, I mean, even like, for instance, like Klay Thompson's not the player that he used to be. Draymond Green is old, right? And so outside of Steph Curry, they've got nobody else that they can rely on right now.
Yeah. One player, if he's sitting on your waiver wire for you to watch, Brook Lopez. We're now seeing remnants of the old Brick Lopez. The other day he had 25 points, but he'll at least get you one block a game. So if you just need a block, Brook Lopez is the way to go.
I think the other person you might want to look at, especially with Chris Paul out, is Cam Anderson. They're going to need some sort of replacement for offense out there, and I think Cam Anderson is going to be a good pickup for everybody.
No, I think he just got. If you take a look at, I'm pretty sure I just saw it come across. It's Cam Johnson, and he now is in COVID protocols.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, take a look at it. I'm pretty sure that I saw that come across. Also who is struggling with COVID protocols again?
No, not Cam Johnson. Cameron Payne. Cameron Payne.
Cameron Payne. Got it.
Cam Johnson. Yeah. Cameron Payne.
Do you know who is struggling with COVID protocols again, Jed? Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert is once again in COVID protocols.
Oh man, that's crazy.
No, they were saying that that has not helped the Timberwolves at all training for him.
Yeah. All right. I am back in Chicago on Thursday, and so we'll probably see you on Friday.
Okay.
All right. Safe travels. Good seeing you guys.